If you're hearing this, maybe you'll understand what it feels like to be unseen. My name is Charlie, or at least that's what he called me. Back then, I didn't have a name, just a cold nose, aching paws, and a heart that still believed someone might love me. It was winter, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones. The streets were wet, glistening under the yellow streetlights. I was smaller then, weaker. Every sound, footsteps, engines, laughter, felt like a reminder that I didn't belong anywhere. I wandered through alleys, nose pressed to the ground, hoping for a scrap of bread, a piece of warmth. People passed me by. Some smiled, some frowned, but none stopped. It's strange how invisible you can be in a world so full of eyes. That night, I found a broken fence behind an old store. I crawled under it and curled up, shivering against the damp earth. Rain fell slowly, not hard, just enough to make everything colder. I watched the lights in the windows across the street, families eating, laughing, warm, and I wondered what it feels like to be part of something like that. I must have fallen asleep, because when I woke up, the world was quieter. And then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, heavy, not like the others. I lifted my head, eyes half open, and there he was. He didn't walk past. He stopped. Our eyes met, just for a moment, but it was enough. I could see kindness in his face, something familiar. He crouched down and whispered, "Hey, buddy, you okay?" No one had ever asked me that before. He looked at me like I mattered, like I was more than just another stray. He reached out his hand, carefully so I wouldn't run, and I didn't. I was too tired to be afraid anymore. He took off his jacket and wrapped it around me. It smelled like soap, coffee, and warmth. When he lifted me, I trembled. Not from fear, but because I couldn't believe what was happening. For the first time in my life, someone saw me. Someone chose me. He carried me to his car. The seat was soft. The heater hummed. He kept talking to me the whole drive. "We'll get you cleaned up, little guy. Don't worry. You're safe now." I didn't understand the words, but I understood the tone. The way his voice softened when he said safe. When we reached his house, I smelled something amazing. Food, soap, warmth. He dried me off, fed me, gave me a blanket. Then he smiled and said, "You need a name, huh? How about Charlie?" That name felt like a heartbeat, like a promise that I wasn't alone anymore. From that day, my world changed. Every morning, he'd pour food into my bowl, and I'd wag my tail so hard it made the bowl rattle. He'd laugh and say, "You're gonna knock it over again, silly boy." Sometimes I think I laughed too, in my own way. We had our routines. He'd drink coffee while I sat beside his chair. He'd talk about his day, and though I didn't understand every word, I listened to his voice. Because that's what love sounds like. In the evenings, we'd walk by the lake. The sun would melt into the water, and he'd throw a stick as far as he could. I'd chase it, my paws splashing through the shallows, and when I brought it back, he'd grin and say, "Good boy, Charlie." No reward could ever mean more than that. Sometimes, when he was quiet, he'd sit under the old oak tree in our yard. I'd bring my ball, drop it beside him, but instead of playing, he'd just stare into the distance. His shoulders would sink, and I'd rest my head on his knee. He never said what was wrong, but I could feel it. Something heavy inside him. So I stayed. Because that's what love does. It doesn't ask. It just stays. At night, when he'd fall asleep on the couch, I'd curl beside him, my head on his arm, listening to the rhythm of his breathing. That sound became my favorite thing in the world. The sound of home. And one evening, as the light turned golden and soft, he looked at me and said, "You know, Charlie, you're the best thing that ever happened to me." I didn't know what best meant, but I understood love when I heard it. And I decided, right then, that I'd love him forever. Even if forever wasn't long enough. It was a morning like every other. The kind where sunlight slipped gently through the window, and I waited by the door, my tail tapping softly against the floor. That's what love had become for me, waiting for him. Every day, every morning. But that day, something felt different. He moved slower. His smile was still there, but his eyes, they looked tired, like they were hiding something behind them. I tilted my head, watching him. Dogs notice things. The quiet pauses, the heavy sighs. He was packing a bag. I wagged my tail, thinking maybe it was another trip. I loved trips. Car rides meant windows down, air rushing through my fur, his laughter in the wind. But this time, he didn't laugh. He crouched beside me, rubbed my head gently, and whispered, "Be good, Charlie. I'll be back soon." I barked softly, just once. Our way of saying I love you too. He walked to the car, his shoes clicking on the pavement. I followed close behind, ready to jump in like always. But when he opened the door, he didn't tell me to hop in. He looked at me for a long time. The morning light caught in his eyes, and I saw tears. "Stay, boy. I'll be back." The door closed. The engine started. The car began to roll away. I barked once, then again. I ran after it, as far as my legs could take me. But the road stretched endlessly, and he didn't stop. The sound of the engine faded, leaving behind only silence and dust. I waited by the road that day. The sun climbed high, then slipped away. The sky turned orange, then gray. Still, I waited. When night came, I curled up under the oak tree. That was our place. He'd come back there. He always did. But the next morning came, and the road was empty. I waited again and again. Days turned into weeks. The leaves began to fall. The air grew cold, but I couldn't leave. Because what if he came back and I wasn't there? Sometimes people stopped. They tried to call me, offer food, even reach out a hand, but I didn't move. I wasn't waiting for anyone else. My world had only one sound that mattered. His voice. The one that said my name. Charlie. I could still hear it in my mind. Every time the wind blew, I'd close my eyes and imagine he was near. But he never came. Seasons changed. Snow began to fall. I learned the rhythm of waiting. The quiet hours, the ache in my heart. The way hope can live inside even when everything else fades. Children played nearby sometimes. One little boy once asked his mother, "Why does that dog always sit there?" And she said softly, "Maybe he's waiting for someone." She was right. I was waiting. Not for food, not for comfort, just for him. Every car that passed made my heart jump. Every footstep made me lift my head. But each time it wasn't him. And each time my heart broke a little more. Nights were the hardest. When the world went quiet and the stars looked cold and far away. I'd curl up under the oak tree, the same tree where we once laughed together, and whisper in my heart, he promised he'd come back. Maybe he forgot. Maybe he couldn't. But love doesn't stop just because someone's gone. I stayed, through rain, through cold, through every lonely sunrise, because that's what love does. It holds on, even when it hurts. I grew thinner, older. My fur lost its shine, but my heart still waited. And every night, before I closed my eyes, I imagined his voice. Soft, kind, calling my name. Charlie, come here, boy. And I'd see him smiling in my dreams, his hand reaching out, his eyes full of love. I never stopped believing, because dogs don't know how to give up. We only know how to love and wait. I don't remember how long it's been now. Days turned into weeks, weeks into years. The seasons changed again. The tree that once held bright green leaves now stood old, its branches bare and still. I used to run around that tree, chasing shadows, waiting for his laughter to fill the air. Now I could barely stand. My legs trembled. My fur had turned gray, but I still waited. Every sunrise, I opened my eyes to the road, and every night, I closed them to the sound of the wind, whispering through the grass, as if it was saying, "He'll come back, Charlie. Just wait a little longer." And so I did, because that's what love does. It believes, even when the world forgets. Sometimes people would stop by. They'd bring food or sit quietly beside me. A few would pat my head and whisper, "Good boy. You're still here." But they didn't understand. I wasn't staying for food. I was staying for him. The world around me had changed. New houses, new cars, different faces every day. But my heart, it stayed the same. Because somewhere, deep down, I still believed he'd keep his promise. I'll be back soon. And then, one evening, the air felt different. The sun was low, painting the sky in soft gold and orange, just like it had that very first day he found me. The wind was gentle, the kind that carried memories, and in the distance, I heard footsteps, slow, familiar. I lifted my head. My vision was blurry, but I knew that sound. I knew that walk. Could it be? A figure appeared at the end of the road. Older now, gray hair. But those eyes, those were the same eyes that once looked at me and said, "Hey buddy, are you lost?" My heart, weak as it was, began to race. My tail tried to wag. It barely moved. He came closer, his steps unsteady. Tears filled his eyes before he even reached me. He knelt beside me, his hands shaking as they touched my face. "Charlie," he whispered, his voice breaking. "You waited for me." I wanted to bark, to jump, to tell him how long I'd waited. But my body couldn't move like before. I just looked at him, and he understood. because love doesn't always need words. He wrapped his arms around me, pulled me close, and for the first time in years, I felt home again. "I'm sorry, buddy," he said softly. "Life, it got so busy. But I never forgot you. Not for one day." I pressed my head against his chest. That sound, his heartbeat, was the one I'd been waiting to hear again. The sun began to sink behind the oak tree. The sky glowed gold, then pink, then turned into soft twilight. He stayed with me through it all, his hand resting gently on my back, his tears falling into my fur. "You were the best boy, Charlie," he whispered. "The best I ever had." My eyes grew heavy, but I wasn't scared, because he was here. And that's all I ever wanted. I looked at him one last time, and in that moment, I wanted to tell him everything. That I wasn't angry, that I never stopped believing, that even when he didn't come back, I still loved him. Because dogs don't love for moments. We love for lifetimes. The wind felt warm now, like a soft hand brushing my fur. The pain was fading. The world around me grew quiet, peaceful. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting anymore. When I opened them again, the oak tree looked different, brighter, full of light. The air smelled like spring again. And there, standing under that golden tree, was him, smiling. He wasn't old anymore. Neither was I. He knelt down, opened his arms, and said, "Come on, Charlie. Let's go home." And this time, he didn't leave. They say dogs don't understand forever, but I think they're wrong. Because love like this, it never ends. Not with time, not with distance, not even with goodbye. I was Charlie, and I waited. And in the end, he came back.